coaches are in. When you need a timely, transparent friend, tune into the coaches are in. Talking career, business, health, and wealth. You got a friend now. Into the coaches are in. With authenticity, come on, let's take a seat and tune in.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
Well,
Lovely evening it is.
yeah, lovely evening.
Lovely Monday evening.
Right. Welcome to the Coaches Are In. We are excited to be here with you again on this Monday evening. And excited that you are tuning in or maybe even catching the replay. And we hope that we will be bringing you another wonderful episode that will help to elevate you in some way or maybe even educate you tonight based on what we're going to be talking about, which we're excited about. But to kick it off, let us introduce ourselves just in case this is your first time seeing the Coaches Are In. I'm Dr. Sharita Weatherspoon. I am the creator of the Coaches Are In. I am also the CEO of the Align Biz Co, where I work with aspiring and emerging Black women entrepreneurs to help them launch, grow, and scale businesses that bring them joy and build their bank accounts.
All right. And I am Allison Garrett. I'm your behavioral interventionist, and I work with women to help them identify exactly what has them stuck so that they can experience true freedom in their life without years of therapy.
And I'm Dr. Malika. I'm your confidence coach, your empowerment specialist. I am the owner operator of the Speaker LLC, and I help you show up as your best you on purpose.
Yes.
On purpose.
Not
Now,
be
are
on
you a
purpose.
specialist?
Can't be by accident.
Oh, yeah. Well, we trying to get this identity thing together. That's a whole nother show, y'all. I
Specialize and strategize.
We strategize. We don't specialize. We strategize. So you see how we keep it real on the show, right?
Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and jump right into our viewer question. This is an interesting question. It's pretty deep. And I am curious to see what my co-hosts have to say about this. I will add something to the conversation, but I feel like I'm not in a place to really talk too much about it. But I do have some thoughts that I'm gonna share. But I really want to hear what they have to say too. So this week's viewer question is: I've had a series of relationships that didn't work out, and now I'm starting to believe that maybe I'm the problem. I want to find a healthy, loving relationship, but part of me feels like I'm not worthy of real love. How do I overcome these feelings and attract the kind of relationship I truly desire?
Okay. Yeah. I could do it for a couple of reasons. I could identify with this personally and professionally. So I would say across the board, the first thing that you're going to hear is it's you, right? You're the common denominator. If you have all these relationships, it has to be you. That's typically, what we hear, what we feel about ourselves, which doesn't really help. So what I would say is what I experience with women often in this space is they have not yet clearly identified what it is they really want in a relationship, or what they say they want is typically things that are on the surface, right? If you watch any of these shows, I just was watching something just the other day on one of the social media outlets where they bring the person out who's looking to find love, and they have a group of people lined up on the wall, and they pop the balloon when they're no longer interested. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting because people pop the balloon before the person even says anything. So that really made me think about my experience in this arena, as well as what other women experience when you feel like so many times you fail. It's likely because you don't really have a core of what it is you're looking for. The things that you're looking for are on the outer, how a person originally shows up in the physical, and you've created this type. right? So if this person's not your type, then you kind of discard them. But we tend to entertain the type of relationship that doesn't really serve us well because we don't yet know about the things that we don't know. So when you talk about being worthy, yes, we do have to have a sense of self-worth, right? And it definitely is tied to you feeling unworthy. However, you can make the shift in just being able to identify what's really important to you. Because, like, for example, you could, like, women will say, I want somebody to make a certain amount of money. What does that really mean for me? If I said I want a relationship and I want the person to make X amount of dollars, what does that mean if they are in debt or they're not generous, right? How much money they make really has nothing to do with me if they're not generous. So I think that we really need to recollect what it is that we really desire in a relationship, as opposed to identifying a person or a avatar of what that looks like. So it's highly likely that you're finding yourself in this pattern of failed relationships because you have not clearly identified exactly what it is that you're looking for. And you're probably spending more time entertaining those that you're not really interested in or connected with, maybe out of fear of being by yourself. So I would say step back, take some time to really evaluate what it is that you want as a characteristic of a person in a healthy relationship. And that could be across the board. Before you even think romantically, think about in your relationships as a whole. If you have friendships that work really well, what are the characteristics of your friends? Right? Do you go around and say, "Oh, my friendships are not working out," right? So it's the same kind of thing. You're not having the time to identify what it is you really desire, and or you're cutting off true connection based on just something outer and not really being able to identify with the inner. So just take some time to figure out, what do you really want in a relationship? Not a person, not the tall, dark, and handsome, 6 feet, 100K. Like, all these things are really ridiculous because at the end of the day, when I talk to women, they say they've had that and it didn't work. So why are you still looking for the physical? Get to know the person internally and find out the core values that are really important to you in a relationship, not just a man.
That's good.
Well,
So
the only thing, the thing that I want to go back to, and just to add on to what you said, she said, I want to find a healthy, loving relationship. And I would ask, similar to what you said, Coach Allison, what does that look like to you? What did that look like to you? How was that modeled in front of you?
Mm-hmm.
Which 9 times out of 10 impacts what I'm looking for. And so I would just ask that question and allow her to share what does that look like? Let's break that down. A loving relationship. And the other thing too, and I always go back to this because I think sometimes what we say and the messages we entertain up here are different.
Don't add up. Yeah.
It's like, I want me a man who's good, who's this, who's that. Okay, girl, that's not who you're attracting. So something inside of you, because I believe we're all spirit beings, something inside of you is attracting something very opposite of what you're saying. And so what are you really entertaining in your mind? What thoughts do you have? What has been modeled in front of you? And I would not necessarily say it's you. I mean, we can only take responsibility for our actions in relationships. We can only take responsibility for how we respond or what we entertain. Like, that's my responsibility. I have to control if some guy walks up to me and he's, I am responsible for how long I entertain it. Once I get to know who that person is, where I meet them, the signs that they show me in the very beginning, right? Because when a brother shows you who they are, it's who they are, right? It's not, it's the same missionary dating. So it's all these kinds of things to me that come into play. But I would say control the controllables. There are things that you can control about you. And there are some things that you are entertaining that probably too long that aren't necessarily what you really want in the end, but you can't help what you're attracting. Like you're attracting something. And if it's not what you're looking for, then I need to do some of that me work to figure out, okay, what's going on here? There's a disconnect between what I say I want and what I'm in and how I'm being treated or how I'm feeling. Maybe I don't feel good. If you're in a relationship and you don't feel good, there's a problem. I mean, you're not always going to feel great, but I'm saying I shouldn't be in a relationship and I feel awful or I feel disrespected or I don't feel worth, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know. It's been a long time since I've been in any kind of relationship except for the marriage relationship I'm in. But I do see a lot of work with a lot of women, young women, and see the kinds of things that they're involved with. And that's to me the first question I would ask, like, what does loving and healthy look like to you?
I think that's good too. Now, I do think that we don't have enough information. Like, while her
Mhm.
question was deep, it's sort of like, well, how many relationships? Like, how did they end? Why did they end? Who ended them? Like, it's just not enough information to be able to address whether or not it potentially is her or like what the cause is, right? And I'm not sure what that glitch is right there that just took Coach Allison out, but hopefully she'll be able to join us again.
She said this question is too much. I need a minute.
So I think we don't have enough information, but
Right.
she asked the question, so we want to do our best to give her helpful responses. So I'm going to say that it could be you.
Could be.
Right. It could be you. It could be your behavior. It could be your attitude. Like all of those types of things in terms of how you show up in the relationship. But it also could be your decisions in terms of, and both of you alluded to this, in terms of who you choose to engage with, and how you engage with them. I also wonder, like, are you giving in the relationships what you want from the relationships? Because you can't expect something from the other person that is different from what you are giving to them, right? So there has to be reciprocity there. So however you might define loving and healthy, are you demonstrating that in the relationship along with having the expectation that they're demonstrating that back to you?
Right.
And then are you what you want? Are you what you want your partner to
To
be?
be. Mm-hmm.
So I think all of those things come into play as well. And then I think it's worth it to just acknowledge the world that we live in today
Yeah.
and what relationships look like today. We don't know
Right.
how old she is either, but I would say the younger she is, probably the more difficult it is. Um, just because even like our young people, in some ways are more emotionally intelligent and like have these, boundaries around like what they're willing to accept and all of that good stuff. And then
Right.
on the other hand, it's like they want to have deep text conversations instead of talking face to face with each other. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
So I am grateful that I am not in a situation where I have to be trying to find a partner in today's world because I just can't even imagine what that would look like.
Yeah.
Right now.
A challenge.
Yeah. So, but I think it's real. I think it's real. But I would just encourage her not to give up. And again, when we're talking about how are you showing up in a relationship, be who you want to be with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Be willing to give that, but also have your boundaries. So as you mentioned, I think Dr. Malika, when you see those red flags, I like recognize them as red
Right.
flags and don't spend more time than you should in a place and with somebody that you shouldn't be with for the sake of being in a relationship, for the sake of not feeling alone.
Right.
And learn to value yourself and enjoy yourself. And I would venture to say that the more focused she is on her, the more likely she is to be seen by what she's looking for. Because
Yes.
it's out here like, I'm trying to find a relationship. I'm trying to find a relationship. It's probably going to continue to elude you. Get focused on you. Let him come and find you. Because I think there's a book out there that talks about that anyway, letting him find the wife. But, we're going to leave that part there. But just focus on you. Learn how to be still and at peace and comfortable and happy and joyful. All of that in your singleness, which will help prepare you for when you're moving into a relationship with somebody. But I
Which
think
is hard.
Yeah, it
It's
is.
hard.
It is. But I think the second part of her, well, I guess the actual question, she gave us some context, and then she said, how do I overcome these feelings and attract the kind of relationship I truly desire? Your first relationship is with yourself. So make sure that is one that is desirable before you try to enter into a relationship with somebody else, because it does sound like there are some things around esteem and all of that worthiness that need to be addressed before she could probably come into a relationship whole anyway.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's all good.
Tough.
Yes, it is. But it's like when she's at a good place because she's identifying that there is a problem. That, that's half the battle, is identifying that there is a problem, and just trying to diagnose what that is just the next part of that.
Yeah. And we just don't want her to mistake it for like, I'm not lovable.
Right.
Because that's not it. Because the fact that you're asking the question, I would say is not it. Because somebody who's just like, if you would say there are people in the world, well, yeah, there are some people in the world who are unlovable. That she's probably not one of them, because she's even asking these questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, she wants to learn. She wants to know. She understands that maybe there's some things. To me, it's like maybe some things I need to work with, but I'm just asking. I need some help. So that's good. That's a good start.
Yes. So hopefully our responses helped her out.
There's hope. There is definitely hope.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So I think we want to go ahead and transition into our next segment.
Yes, we have our guest, and I'm going to share a little bit about her, and then we'll ask some questions. So Anitra Green, she is the owner of Taylormade Behavioral Health Solutions. She is a therapist and author and provides counseling, training, and consulting in areas of behavioral health with a specialization in grief and loss. So, everyone meet Anitra Green.
Hello. Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're excited to have you here. So we're gonna talk about a subject that's a little bit deep. After we get through the niceties, we're gonna dive into it. So Malika mentioned in her introduction of you that you're owner, right? Owner, CEO, I'm not sure the right wording, of Taylormade Behavioral Health Solutions. So tell us a little bit about that, where you're located, who you serve, and how you support your clients.
Sure. So Taylormade Behavioral Health Solutions is a mental health training, counseling, and consulting company. And actually, I'm shifting. In 2025, I will no longer be a provider of direct service for therapy, but I will continue to create content, produce trainings, share workshops, and also travel as an author. I opened my practice in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic to respond to the mental health needs. I always say that, it's not easy to find a Black and brown therapist. I'm happy to say that that's changing, but during the time that I opened my telehealth practice, because most of the things that I do as a therapist has been virtual. Now the trainings are in person, and I do in-person things, but primarily in the pandemic, everything was virtual. So that is where I showed up and, created space for everybody, but particularly targeting Black and Brown communities, because as we know, there's a lot of stigma whenever it comes to mental health. And so I was happy to be a part of being on the front lines during that time and continue to, enjoy showing up in that space.
Awesome.
Very
Awesome.
nice.
Yes.
So let me ask, one of your specializations is grief. You even wrote a book about it. So, to help children, right? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I want to start by saying that, some people are curious, how did I end up in the grief world? I always say that I did not choose grief. It chose me. I happened to venture. Personally, I always share my personal story that during the time I was studying to become a counselor, I had 3 deaths in my family while I was at the University of Pittsburgh. So interestingly, grief kind of showed up in my personal life, and then my work with children. So for the past 17 years, in addition to being an entrepreneur, I've worked in a school setting. And so my work with children kept presenting grief, whether it was from violence, whether it was from natural causes. And so after studying and just seeing that it's showing up in multiple spaces, not just in death, divorces and changes and health problems, that grief just kept showing up. It piqued my interest, and I found myself focusing more on that. And while I do treat a variety of, mental health challenges, depression, anxiety, and all of those things, grief kind of found its way in my heart. And I always say that God kind of gave me a passion for it, because it's not where I saw my career starting. I never woke up and said, oh, one day I want to specialize in grief and be a grief therapist. But it's certainly the space that my life has led me to. And I have to actually say that I enjoy it here. In my latest project, the grief book was based on the fact that children are often left out of conversations about grief. It's like we want to hide it from them. And when my daughter was 3 years old, my father died. And I really didn't know, even though I was a therapist, I didn't know how to have the conversation with a child. So my latest project, The Day Grandpa's Music Stop, is really a new way to address grief through storytelling, because children they love to read. It takes the parent out of the front seat of having this complex conversation. And reading is fun. And so I'm hoping that the book helps start conversations with families about grief, because we're a grief avoiding society. We don't like to talk about death, but it is a part of life. And I think the earlier we start having these conversations, the less stigma and the less fear that we'll have when it comes to talking about death.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. I think I always felt that way. Losing parents as a child, it was just something that we never talked about. So that's definitely a great space to be in. And in talking about this, like we're headed into the holiday season, right? So we know that can be a rough period for people who have lost loved ones. So what tips can you give us, or share with our viewers to help them navigate grief during this specific period in time?
One, I want to tell people to be patient with themselves. I think that society has kind of placed this notion that there's a time limit on grief, and there is not. For those of us who have ever lost anybody that we love, we know that grief is forever. So sometimes people are shocked and they're like, oh, I lost my mom 2 years ago and I'm still in this place, and they want to rush it, but you can't hurry grief. There's not a timeline. So the first, I would say, be patient with yourself. Also, have a plan A and have a plan B. The thing about grief is that it's very unpredictable. So yes, you might say, oh, I'm going to I'm going to come to Thanksgiving and I'm going to cook the turkey and I'm going to do this and this and that. And then you wake up that day and you're like, no, I'm not. I don't feel like it. So I tell people, don't put pressure on yourself. Leave your plans flexible. Have a plan A and have a plan B. Maybe you shouldn't sign up to bring the turkey. Maybe you should sign up to bring sodas, because if you don't show up, it's not going to make a big deal, because you really don't know how you're going to feel. Sometimes people think that they're going to not be in a good place, and then they wake up and they're like, you know what, I feel better than I thought that I would. So have realistic expectations for yourself. Don't put pressure on yourself. I always share the story where, when my grandmother lost her mom, she went to the cemetery every holiday and decorated it. Well, I tried to do that when she died, and it was awful. And I'm like, this is not for me. I can't I can't follow what I see other people doing because that's not how my grief shows up. The cemetery does not bring me peace. It actually distresses me. And so
Mm-hmm.
I thought, you know what? The same thing that brings some people peace might distress someone else. So I think that you have to grieve on your own terms and not compare. Or sometimes we see people doing other things on social media, or we hear people doing it. And then we're like, oh, I'm not doing that. It doesn't mean that you don't love the person that you lost. It means that that doesn't work for you. So I
Right.
don't suggest people do things that don't serve them well. The other thing that I encourage people to do is to practice a lot of self-care. With grief, sometimes people aren't eating. It batters your body. It really does. It can make you tired. Some people are exhausted. If you already have health challenges, it can make it worse. So listen to your body. Sometimes we need to take a mental health day off. Sometimes we need to take a few days off around the holidays from work because we know we just don't have it. We already know that
Right.
this is the time of year where our battery is draining faster. So you have to figure out ways to preserve yourself. And the last thing I would say is don't be afraid to seek help. There's a lot of people that don't think that grief is a reason to go to counseling, and it absolutely is. It is devastating. It affects your mind, it affects your body. And I just think that because death is something that occurs and we've dealt with it for so long on our own, we don't understand the value in seeking support. Anybody can benefit from counseling, but when you're grieving, grief counseling is highly effective. And for many people, it is something that they may not consider that is worth, exploring as an option.
That's all good
Wow.
thing. Thank you.
That is good. That is good. So let's switch gears and talk about the emotions that a large portion of our country is feeling after the election. I think grief is definitely one of those feelings. So, how do you recognize it, and how do people recognize this emotion, this feeling, this thing they're dealing with, and then how should they deal with it?
I'm so glad you brought up the election. I mean, what an appropriate topic and timing. Yes. So grief, I think that people typically associate grief with death, as I said earlier, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not. It's the loss of anything. It could be a home. It could be a relationship. But this whole election, definitely, I mean, the feelings of grief, we saw the shock, we saw the anger, we saw the sadness, we see the anxiety, we see people are still trying to take it all in. And those are some of the same stages of grief. And I think that there's a lot of things that people are probably feel like they're losing with this election. Number one, losing their faith in a democracy. I mean, there's a lot of questions around, the character of our leader, women and people who are not sure, loss of security. What is coming next? There's a lot of questions. Is Project 2025 going to happen? There's people that are saying no, including president. And then there's people that are saying absolutely. So there's people who feel like they're going to lose their rights. They're going to lose access to their bodies. They're losing their faith because they're not understanding what's going on. Why is this happening? So there's all of these losses compiled, in this whole election outcome. And it's requiring people to really dig deep. I think for many people, it's a real feeling. I don't think that anybody should feel shamed or embarrassed about their feelings because it's real. It's a lot happening in our world. So again, sleeplessness. People are saying, that they're waking up in the middle of the night, that they're having this heavy feeling, in their gut. They're crying, they're irritated, they're anxious. Like these are some of the emotions that, as I'm listening to people on social media, and all of that can be tied to grief. Really being concerned about what are we going to lose? And even losing the hopes about what would happen if the Trump was not your candidate. All of the things that people envisioned if we had, our first female president, the disappointment of what we hoped for. Like that's a real thing. So I just encourage people to talk about it. There's all these spaces. I know Therapy for Black Girls even has spaces. There's spaces where you can go and connect and just share. I do think that it starts with being honest about your feelings and not stuffing it in or pretending that you're okay. And then the rest from there is just really honestly sharing your thoughts and your feelings and taking a break. And if you're overwhelmed, I suggest some people come off of social media, because when you're bombarded with that constant images and words and information, it's not going to make you feel more peaceful. It's actually overwhelming. So I think at some point, unfortunately, because of technology is the gift, but sometimes it is what is stressing us out. Sometimes you got to unplug from this stuff because it can be a bit much.
Yeah.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate to bring the conversation back around to the children, because I've seen a number of posts from people in my Facebook circle who have shared about how their children, and I'm talking about like grade school, like maybe through high school, so not even voting age children, are reacting to the outcome of the election and actually like experiencing like angst about it, like they're like distraught, like literally crying about the results of the election because of the fear they have of what it means for them in their future. And it seemed to have caught the parents by surprise. I mean, I think that's probably because, we have these adult conversations that our children are
Yes.
hearing, but not necessarily engaged in, and we're not recognizing what they're picking up from us. But they're seeing all of this happen, and now this major thing happen, and almost like they don't even know what to do with it. So I
Right.
think there's probably a gap that exists now. Like, yes, we need to care for ourselves as adults who may be in a grieving process over the election, but not forgetting about our children who have been kind of like eyewitnessing all of this and our reactions. So can you speak to how, we as parents might engage with our children on this topic and helping them process what they're feeling?
Absolutely. I think the old adage, many of us grew up with this mindset of children are to be seen and not heard. And I think about that because growing up, that really was a big part of the culture, especially in our community. I can't speak for other races, but as an African American,
Yes.
child. And in some ways, it helped that we were protected from information because people did not have adult conversations around children. They would tell you to leave or go out the room. But I also think in some instances like this, when it comes to grief, when it comes to the election, because kids are voting age, we think that they are not aware, but they are. They pick up on our stress. They pick up on our anxiety. They hear you saying, "Oh, I hope we're not sent back to our foreign country. I hope we're not deported." They're listening. And so I would encourage parents to have the conversation with your children, doing check-ins, asking them, how are you feeling about all of this? Giving them the opportunity to share. No, they're not able to vote, but they are able to hear, they're able to feel. And they definitely know, just like when COVID happened, there's so many things happening in and around them that they pick that up. And I think that we do. We have to check in on our children. Sometimes we don't think to do that, in the
Right.
same way we don't think to check on them about other things because they're young. We think, oh, they don't have any stresses. All they have to do is go to school and get good grades. But their life is not that simple. They are
Right.
complex. They have every emotion that we have as adults. They feel every, range of feelings. So I would just say to parents to not leave them out of the conversation. Make it a dinner time conversation. Say, hey, the election, how do you feel about the presidency? How do you feel about President Trump winning? How do you feel about, do you know who, if they could have voted, do you know who they would have chosen? Why would they have chosen them? And for some kids, they've done the mock elections, and sometimes children are telling their parents about their version of it. And then there's other children who are not engaging in that. But I do think that it's worth trying to figure out what is their perspective. We'll be surprised when we actually sit down and talk to our children,
Right.
find out just how much they know and just how insightful they are, and how in the know they are. Even if they're not getting it from us, they're talking to their friends. So if we don't take the lead, they're going to get information from other people and potentially be worrying themselves privately on social media. They have a lot of access. So I think that we definitely have to protect them and also guard what they're watching.
Mm. Yeah, good. Thank you so much.
That's good.
All right, so we have one other question that we're going to ask you this evening, and we're asking all of our guest experts.
Uh-oh. Well, She got kicked out. Did she get
Yeah.
kicked out like you got kicked out?
Technical difficulties
You gotta love
today.
technology. Gotta
All right.
love it.
So should we go ahead and ask the question? Oh, she's back.
Oh,
We was
there
about
she
to
see.
flow. We was going to ask the question.
Right.
They were ready.
Good. Let's talk about Facebook user issue. And I'm like, well, I'm not even logged into Facebook right now.
I know that's how I think that was my thing. It said that I was blocked.
My goodness. All right. So the question.
Yes.
All right. What is one trait or characteristic you think every Black woman needs to move to the next level in their life or business?
Determination.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's good.
That's a good one. And I know you have more to say on that. And we definitely want to hear what it is. But those who are tuning in need to subscribe at thecoachesrn.com to hear what else you have to say about that. So if you go to our website, fill out the little form, put in your contact information, we'll add you to our list. We do not spam you. We do not bombard you with a ton of messages, but you will get access to this exclusive content from Anitra, as well as our previous guests and our upcoming guests, to learn more about what they think is the one trait or characteristic that every Black woman needs to move to the next level in their life or business. So again, just go to thecoachesrn.com and sign up to get that information. And some of our guest speakers have included some promo codes for their services as well. So the only way to get those is to be on the list. So that's another reason to go sign up. And that email will come out later this week. So I want to thank you for joining us this evening and for sharing with us from your expertise. We know that the holidays can be difficult in general. And then I think with the added weight of what's going on in the world, could make it very, very difficult for some people, like especially if the person you might have normally talked to, about what's going on is no longer here, kind of feeling just alone and lost. So we appreciate you sharing your tips with our audience. And I'm sure that it's going to be very, very helpful for those who are dealing with this. Now, I do want to give you an opportunity to share with our audience how they might follow you, contact you, reach out to you, book you,
Sure.
books.
Yes, book me. All of them. Thank you, ladies, for having me. I really thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. So you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Taylormade BHS. That's TAYLORMADE BHS. You can also find A Day Grandpop's Music Stopped, my book, on Amazon and Barnes and Nobles. And you can reach me if you have questions about podcast appearances, trainings, workshops, or any of that. You can reach me at info@tailormadebhs.com.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think that was another good episode. What do you think, Louise?
I agree. Yes, all
It's
helpful
so-
information. I hadn't even thought about the kids and grief and associating it with how to have the conversation. So that was definitely good.
Yeah, it's necessary. It is necessary, and I hope that. I'm going to steer people to this episode that I, know who are experiencing grief, and we're going right into Thanksgiving, and it's supposed to be about family, and grief is like she said, it shows up in so many different ways that family might be the opposite of what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah. I think the one thing we didn't necessarily touch on, but is probably important to say, is for like those of us who are not dealing with it, to be sensitive and honor what other people are going through.
Right.
So just because you think somebody should be over something doesn't mean that they should be over it, or if you're not responding or behaving the way that you think is appropriate for them to grieve. Like, just
right.
don't.
Yeah.
Right.
be a help, be what they need in that moment. And that could just be kind of leaving them alone, but it could be surrounding them. So I think, I'm not the expert here, but I would rather you ask how you can help someone while,
Right.
deal with what they're dealing with, rather than, judging them or pushing them to move past something, or, get over something, and just, act out of love and be supportive in whatever way you can.
Yep. I agree.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so I think we are going to call it a night. We are going to have a giveaway. It's not. I don't know, is it a contest? Maybe there's a contest because everybody can't win.
Right.
Yes, it is a contest. We'll
But
tell
we
you
are
the week.
going to be promoting, starting this week, we're going to be promoting a giveaway that you'll be able to enter to win. I guess we'll just call it the Coaches RN
Giveaway.
Level Up Kit. I guess.
Yes.
There it is.
So you're going to get something from each of us in that kit. Keep your eye out for what that is. You'll see us posting on it this week with instructions on what you need to do to be considered or to have your name thrown into the hat to be pulled as a winner.
Yep.
So we're excited about that. I hope that you'll participate and follow the instructions on it so you can help us get the Coaches RN out to more women who need to hear the information that we're bringing to the marketplace.
Yep.
Yes, for sure. Excited.
Yes. All right, so I think that will do it for tonight then, ladies.
That's it.
All right. I guess the coaches are out.
Yeah, the
Hearts
coaches
and minds are clear.
The Coaches RN. When you need a timely, transparent friend, tune into the Coaches RN. Talking career, business, health, and wealth. You got a friend now. Into the Coaches RN. With authenticity. Come on, let's take a seat and tune in.